Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat. I'm with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
It's maddening how often military bombers will ruin Miracle Day, crisscrossing ocean blue in tic-tac pattern, labyrinth of garbled line, venomous skies flooded by streaking toxins prior to advancing storm, the free fall of tainted rain pounding pavement, vaporizing poison for inhale by unsuspecting crowds. What excuse can justify the monetary cost of bombarding metropolitan sky in chemical haze? What purpose is being served, considering phenomena worldwide menace, a global policy embarked upon by all the governments aligned to the one world order? It's another part of some unknown agenda openly paraded before all to see. And still so many deny the existence of the Illuminati and its secret machination. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen. Here on Studio B, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And we come to you 24/7, a wide variety of hosts covering every topic, speaking about things that are largely unspoken and little discussed. And we're just attempting to share opinion which would help you to better understand the situation, circumstance of what we're contending with as a world. And I know since, personally, since the events of 9/11, that there's been a lot of awakening going on, and that many people have been forced, because many are unwilling, to look at world in different manner. But the events of that day forced us all to new introspection. And it was a catalyst for a lot of awakening for a lot of people. I know certainly before that time I had no interest at all in conspiracy or the events as far as the connections to the New World Order and the ulterior motives, the behind the scenes of major events, historical events, major happenings which have been propelling us for hundreds, if not thousands of years towards this one world order, the contrivance of a world government which would give the elite ability to rule with impunity. And even though this is the public face of the New World Order, this whole push for world government, there's a secret agenda to it all. There's something that it is even more sinister, which underlies all of the different wisdom texts that have come out, where the elites and the Freemasons, these different secret societies which are loosely knit together, where they tell you what they plan on doing and where they want to lead the world. And it has to do with that whole war in heaven, which happened so long ago, which not a lot of people even have any belief in. Um, Most people, I would say a lot, don't even believe in Lucifer or Satan or any of the other fallen angels. They only believe what they see covered in the news, current events. Also, I just want to welcome everybody and thank you for being here, gathered here today in fellowship with all of us. Welcome Pale Rider and Briar and Causation and Comet and Monkey and Jerbear and Doc Who and all of the others that are in chat room and not in immediate scroll. Um, and so a lot of people don't believe in, anything other than what they can read in the paper. They don't believe that there's any spiritual aspect to what we're dealing with as world. There's no, um, as far as powers, principalities, the rulers of darkness, wickedness in high places. Now, they, even though they will deny that aspect of the biblical scriptures and the connections to the New World Order, they will believe in aliens or believe in the Anunnaki or, you know, um, mythology in that regard. But the connections to these aliens, to like the Watchers or the Rebel Angels, they don't believe that aspect of it because a lot of people deny um, that the gospel is inspired in one way or the other, or that it is in any way prophetic, and most people believe that it has been contrived by a group of um, human writers, even though there's a mathematical code that, as far as the Bible codes, there's this whole other set of codes that have been found and are found within the Torah and other aspects of the Old and New Testament, which are prophetic and give us insight into events and occurrences which have happened um, thousands of years into the future from the time that they were written. If you believe that they were scribed 3,300 years ago, um, and, and and if you don't believe that they are any older, still, that's a long period of time, and for a lot of events to be encoded within that particular, the gospel as it came down to us in that way. I mean, that in itself should let you know that there's more to the text and to the manner in which those texts have arrived and been passed down um, over generations and over many epochs of time to reach us. And and still, most people, a lot of people, they still think that it's all made up. And so that was the thing. I thought the same way, and I had once believed that um, that really all of the different religions were all like spokes of a wheel. They all, even though they were different paths, they all had the same origin and they all led to the same place. And I didn't realize then that there were many uh, pagan religions which believed and worshipped a pantheon of these gods and goddesses, which I didn't know back then that these beings were some of the angels that were cast down out of the heavens and that had attempted to go to war against the Most High. And so all of that did not make sense to me um, until I got better understanding of why it was that the Most High considered those kind of religions, these religions which worshipped a myriad number of gods and goddesses, um, how it is that it's the fallen angels that are parading themselves as these so-called gods, and that because they are his angels that were cast out, um, how really, you know, they're nothing more than angels. They're not real gods, and that there's only one true God, one true creator that brought all things into being. And so it's it's definitely um, somewhat difficult to make sense of all of it as far as the underlying truth, which brings together the mythology of the world together with the prophetic scriptures and to those things which even other prophets have been warning us about for hundreds of years. And it seems like even Enoch, when he scribed the book of Enoch, he wrote that he was writing for a distant generation, one that would be far into the future. And that many of the things that are written as far as the prophecy and the mythology and the prophetic utterances of different individuals from different parts of the world, they all speak about or there has at least been more written about the end of days and what would be the final generation. And again, it's my opinion that we are that generation, but there has been more written about this particular time than any other um, in the history of humanity, which makes the times that we're living in intriguing to say the least. Let me post what I'm going to be speaking about in the chat room real quick. Also, Kevin, if you're out there, I'm going to get you to call in on second hour so we can share your story. And if not, then we'll just what about for the past that let me know if you can't hear me. It seems like my connection went out. And if I need to call in, I'll certainly do so. But it seems to have reconnected. But so, anyways, I wanted to talk a little bit about, further elaborate on those particular things, and especially in connection to um, the giants and how they came to be to inhabit the land of Canaan. and to give some history about that particular region and why we see the ongoing um, wars between Israel and the other Muslim nations that are surrounding Israel, and how these particular wars have been perpetuated. They're controlled opposition because, um, and this is, as far as the connections between all the governments of the world, whether they're communist or capitalist or Muslim or Christian or Jewish. There's a group, the leaders of all those nations. They have this connection to the New World Order, and that's the part that we don't understand, because the wars are contrived. They fund both sides. The terrorists are funded by the same governments that claim to be at war against them, and so we are led, um, kicking and screaming, and whether we're willing or not, we're led into these conflicts, and they serve the purpose of those that are pulling the strings, um, of all the world leaders. And this is also why you will find, all of them kind of flashing those gang signs, those Masonic hand signs, or when they meet and they share a handshake, they share these Masonic handshakes. Yeah, I know, Herbal, that the sound went out. It kicked me out for just a few minutes, but we should be good. And so we'll talk about some of these things to kind of bring some clarity to people that are still trying to wrap their minds around how the matrix plays out, and how really, you know even like with elections, we're given the illusion of choice. It's the same thing with, as far as the fate or the destiny of humanity. We all believe that we have the ability, which I absolutely believe that we have the power, especially those individuals that are awake and that, utilize their full focus and intent to create change, that these kind of individuals can really create, um, beautiful effect in world. But that, as far as the fate and the destiny of humanity, that those kind of things, forces or not, um, they still affect all aspects of world and the things that happen, um, and how we are, you know led even daily um, into what will be, because everything is prophetic, and so it's all unfolding and will unfold as has been written within the different gospels, as well as, the way that certain prophets have laid it out, have shared with humanity how they foresee, because they have been given vision or have been, um, shown certain vision, and how these things line up with where we're being led and what will unfold in the future. Okay, and so when I come back, we'll we'll talk about in the second part. I'm going to speak a little bit more about this, and then we'll talk about the things that happened um, in connection to the giants and how these individuals are connected to the seed of the serpent and what happened in the land of Canaan, how Og was spared, um, and how it says in the scriptures and in the targums that he was the last giant, and that he was able to make it through the flood because Noah had spared him, and then afterwards, um, he propagated a whole nother lineage of giants, and how these giants were affiliated with the children of Canaan, who was the fourth born son of Ham, and how um, their intermarrying into the Canaanite bloodline um, created a huge power as far as a huge kingdom that was the most feared at that time. They had huge numbers of these very strong and large statured individuals, and as a kingdom, the Canaanites um, were very much feared by the rest of the world, and there was nothing that was going to stop them from a full takeover um, until Joshua was empowered to kind of bring their train to a stop. And so we'll talk about that, and it's definitely an interesting story. Um, that was one of the things of the whole connection as far as the giants and the fallen angels. Those were two of the topics that drove my study of the scriptures and my interest in them, um, so much so that it led me to study of all of the extra biblical, extra canonical texts, and that was, one of my focuses was finding out more information on who the giants were and um, how they got to be here, as well as the fallen angels. And so we'll elaborate if we if the whole breaks are still in order. Jerber says that Studio A is down, so I don't even know if we will have breaks, but if we do, we'll pick up this particular topic on the other side. And also, I will take calls for those of you that are interested in sharing commentary or want to share a piece of information or divulge some kind of story. And it doesn't even have to be in connection to what I would like to focus on in talking about these particular issues. But I know a lot of people that are just now awakening to, as far as the presence of the giants and the fallen angels, that this is a very interesting topic, and the story goes in such depth and covers so much ground that people are trying to wrap their minds around it, and they're looking for answers. They're seeking guidance which would help them to understand the esoteric aspects of world and what drove us to where we are now. Because as far as there's so many people now that have looked into the the cone head giants, and there's all these hybrid skulls now, and like the Star Child skull, and the shows like Ancient Aliens and In Search of Aliens and others. um, they are piquing the interest of humanity into these particular subjects. And also another thing is the whole the satellite imagery, which so many people are utilizing it as tool, or as far as Google Earth, are utilizing it in as a tool to locate structures that have yet to be excavated, which are have yet to be uncovered, or um, as far as archaeology. And there's so many, so many. All right, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. Um, what I was talking about before we went to break was how many are discovering these unexcavated sites, pyramid complexes, megalithic structures, terraces, even like with Nazca, different images being carved into the topography of the land, and how it seems like even every day there's more being discovered, um, and there still remains out there so much that has not been uncovered, and probably so many, maybe even more megalithic sites that haven't yet been discovered, um, as have been. And that's a lot. That really is a lot. And so it's a very interesting area of research. Um, and I know that even the Chinese government, they're keeping trying to keep archaeologists out of their country, and keep um, different individuals from digging around these many different sites, and how there are very old and very large pyramidal complexes in China that have been discovered from by utilizing um, technologies which allow them to look at the topography of the land, and even like with the way that the pyramids in Bosnia were discovered, and how most the cities that were built near and around them, everybody, all the inhabitants, believed them to be just regular mountains or regular hillside. And even right now, how many cities are built on similar kinds of structures, and how you know the different cultures and peoples of the world believe them to be just regular um, natural mountains or natural hillside, and haven't even considered it any other way, because these particular structures are older than all of these established cities, and for all of these different countries, and so that goes back a very long ways. And so those that grew up in these areas, or grew up in these particular cities, they never ever thought otherwise. But now, with so much coming to light, people are starting to look deeper into everything that surrounds them. I know one of my friends that has sent me information on the Thracian Chronicles, and the texts that are associated with that particular culture. He says that 80% of the mound structures in surrounding his particular country are have yet to be excavated. that the governments of, and I'm not mentioning exactly where, because hopefully they'll at some point get the funding to be able to do this kind of research, but um, that there are so many governments in and around this area that do not have the money or the funds to focus in that way on this kind of research, which is so sad because you know that if they ever were to begin excavations on a mass scale, they would absolutely discover priceless, priceless treasures, which not that they would want to sell them or anything, but they could most certainly open up museums which would drive tourism and bring in, dollars from offshore or from other countries and bring people, get them interested, in my opinion, in wanting to come over and to look um, more at the discoveries that are being made. And for whatever reason, China is not included in this category. They've even gone to the point um, of planting trees on top of these structures, these megalithic sites, in order to hide them and to make them appear natural. And for whatever reason, they don't want to excavate them. There have been a few articles that have come out that have been released that speak about um, some of these discoveries being made. But, it's for the, and Cortex says there's loads in China. And yes, there is. I even, not, it wasn't long ago that I saw it was one of the new ancient alien shows, and it was talking about how there was a whole culture, a very old primordial civilization that had, um, and I think they were located in eastern China, and they predated all of the other, um, as far as the Chinese civilization, which has been cited as being the those that were originally there, the peoples that were originally there, and that had led to, like the mythology of the emperor being born of a dragon. Um, that that this culture, this civilization that I'm speaking about now, it predates even the mythologies and the stories which go that far back, of which China is said to have been founded upon. And so there are, again, in my opinion, there are many yet discoveries to be made which would absolutely go against what science has asserted as far as the so-called evolution of humanity. And um, because science thinks of everything in, as being backward, that that we started as hunter gatherers, cavemen or whatever, and that over time and with certain inventions that humanity developed the skills um, to create civilization, the kind of civilization that would be needed to accomplish certain feats over time. But in my research, this is absolutely contrary to the real the reality of what has happened in our ancient past. And this goes back to before the creation of modern humanity, in the prior times, and even with um, the establishment of Adam and Eve and their exile from paradise and their being banished here to the Garden of Eden here upon the earth, that even then, that those times were very advanced, but certainly not as advanced um, as the golden age, as spoken about by Hesiod, when the fallen angels were here and they were creating many of these megalithic sites and had brought down the mysteries of the heavens so that they could create technologies and create culture and create civilization in a way that far surpasses even where we are now. That what we see as far as the technology and the abilities and capacities of modern man, that we are reinventing things that the technologies that had um, already been contrived at a distant time in our past, and that the judgments that were levied by the Most High against the fallen angels for involving themselves in very dark rituals and opening up stargates and portals which invited very dark entities um, into this time and space continuum, that um, that they were very, very advanced in what they were able to do. And even still, some of those technologies have been recreated, that the fallen ones have pushed and guided humanity um, to recreate many of these ancient technologies, these ancient discoveries, but that they have had to restart many times because the Most High did not want them to be able to undermine and to control and to rule on this planet in the way that they had capacity to do so in those very ancient times. Thank you, Cortec. For those that have access to the chat room, Cortec has published some links to some of these megalithic sites in China where you can see some of the, the shrubs and things that have been planted on top of these pyramid complexes in order to hide um, the fact that these kind of megalithic sites are present all over in China and all over the world. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, and then we'll go into some of the details of some of the scriptural accounts. And then I won't be reading a lot of scripture at all, but um, just kind of telling the story. Because again, the fact that there are giants in the world and had been in our ancient past, those things are confirmation. They attest to the validity of these scriptures, because these things were written and have been written into the Gospels for thousands of years. And they talk about the war between the children of Adam, the sons of Adam, and these particular beings. These six-fingered, six-toed double sets of teeth, these particular giants known as the men of renown, and how even up until just a few hundred years ago, and some people say that they are still on the planet, that there are modern sightings of these particular beings, giants being here on the planet even today. Like the whole story of the helicopter pilot that talked to Steve Quell and told him about the a giant that was killed in Afghanistan by special forces, and how this huge being was flown to one of the military bases, I believe it was in Germany, from Afghanistan, and he was the one that um, had piloted the craft that delivered this body. And he was talking about how even though everything was kept on the down low, that while they were traveling and transporting this being, that they were able to pull back the covers and take a really good look. And I believe he said that they even took photographs. There was even a story not long ago speaking about a mountain, a base that was discovered in one of the mountains in Romania, the Busigi mountain range, and how um, the base that was on the interior of this mountain, that it was built and had to have been constructed by giants, because everything that they saw, um, as far as the infrastructure, it all fit and aligned to being utilized by these particular beings in our ancient past. And even though it says, according to the book of Enoch, that the 200 angels, the watchers that abandoned their first estate, that left their place of habitation, as it speaks of in the book of Jude, that it was during the time of Yared, who was Enoch's father, that these angels left their first estate, and that it was during that time that they came down, and being led astray by the daughters of Cain, these 200 giants, they lusted after the daughters of Cain, and taking wives of all which they chose, that this was the result. This copulation is how these unnatural hybrid beings came to be found upon the earth. There are giants that were here before that time, and that even the fallen angels, the feathered serpents, um, the Anunnaki, the rebel angels that were here, they were of giant stature as well. And that scripture even speaks about how when Adam was created, that he and his ancestors, they were also of giant stature, what we would consider to be giants. Even Jonathan Gray, who I did a show with a long time ago, that show has since disappeared, but he was speaking about how he went to Turkey to confirm Ron Wyatt's discovery of Noah's Ark, and um, how not only did he discover Noah's Ark there in the mountains of Arafat, Ararat in Turkey, but that there was a tomb of Noah's wife, that she was buried there, and that somebody had dug up her tomb seeking treasure, and they found bones which she had to have been at least 14 feet tall. And so, we have the story in scripture that the generations before Noah, that they lived a lifespan of almost 1,000 years, and that it wasn't until after the days of Noah and after his time that the stature as well as the longevity of humanity be, began to be reduced, and how even Abraham, he lived to be 175 years of age, but that shortly after his time, the stature and the age of humanity was limited to 120 years. The book of Enoch speaks about how the giants, even though they had immortal lifespans prior to the flood, how they were limited to 500 years after the flood. Hold on one second. A couple things that I wanted to talk about in regards to the whole China story and to the ancient past, and had mentioned a civilization that was recently discovered there, which was unlike the who they gave um, credit to as far as the origins of China as a culture, and the emperor, and how he supposedly was the result of a human woman mating with a dragon, and that's how this particular bloodline, this lineage, came to be in control, and all the emperors are regarded as being connected to these particular beings. But there's a story, and let me go ahead and link this to the chat room for those that haven't heard about it. Um, it speaks of a people that were Caucasians, that they were Caucasians and they lived in China, much like there's in the, I believe it's in South America, they talk about a particular people called the Cloud people, and how these people were unlike all of the native peoples that lived in that area. Um, and they were supposedly white-skinned Caucasian people with long blonde hair. And the people that I'm talking about here in China, and I did post a link in the chat room, those that want to read or study more about what I'm speaking about. Um, I'm going to read just a little portion of the story. It says this. In the late 1980s, perfectly preserved 3,000-year-old mummies began appearing in a remote Taklamakan desert. They had long, reddish blonde hair, European features, and didn't appear to be the ancestors of modern-day Chinese people. Archaeologists now think they may have been the citizens of an ancient civilization that existed at the crossroads between China and Europe. Victor Mayer, a specialist in the ancient corpses and co-author of Mummies of Taran Basin, said modern DNA and ancient DNA show that the Uyghurs, Uighurs, the Kazakhs, the Kyrgyz, the people of Central Asia, are all mixed Caucasian and East Asian. The modern and ancient DNA tell the same story. The discoveries in the 1980s of the undisturbed 4,000-year-old beauty of Lowland and the younger 3,000-year-old body of the Charchin men are legendary in world archaeological circles for the fine state of their preservation and for the wealth of knowledge they bring to modern research. In the second millennium BC, the oldest mummies, like the Lowland Beauty, were the earliest settlers in the Taran Basin. There's also a video that you can, when you pull up the article, it will, it show you the actual mummies and the things that were also discovered with these particular well-preserved mummies. The first Tocharian Nordic mummy found in 1989, a white female with long blonde hair, finally preserved by the arid desert atmosphere of the Taklamakan Desert, based on her partially dismembered limbs and gouged out eyes. Archaeologists believe she was a sacrificial victim. A Tocharian female mummy with long flaxen blonde hair, perfectly preserved, in ponytails, items of weaved material identical to Celtic cloth, definitely prove the Indo-European origins of the Tocharians, who not only built the fantastic Silk Road cities which today lie deserted, but who are also credited with bringing Buddhism, horses, the saddle, and ironworking to China. This mummy was approximately 40 years old, was found in the main chamber of the same tomb. Her tall stature, high nose, and red hair indicate that she was of European descent. Just a little bit more. One of the most famous Tocharian mummies found, the so-called Beauty of Lowland, and right, her face as reconstructed by an artist, Beauty of Lowland. The oldest mummies found in the Taran Basin come from Lowland, located at the east end of the egg-shaped Taklamakan Desert. Dressed only in shades of brown, she was alive as early as 2000 BC, during the era of Abraham and the patriarchs. She died when she was about 40, and next to her head there is a basket which contains grains of wheat. There's when you continue to read the article, it shows you all the different tombs of various kings and various mausoleums and very different preserved sites where these particular mummies and beings were located. But again, it's interesting to see that because even Quetzalcoatl, like the people of South America and Central America, they are a dark skin, black hair, and black brown eyes, and very dark featured. But they cite that Kukulkan, Viracocha, Quetzalcoatl, that this feathered serpent, that he was also a white-skinned European man at times, that he had the ability to shapeshift, but that, they attribute their modern civilization and culture and the ancient, the cultures which the megalithic sites, the creation of all of those megalithic structures, they attribute that to the time of this particular individual. As far as Viracocha, and that's why when the Spaniards returned back to that came again to South America, there was a prophecy that this the white men, the gods, the so-called gods, would return to rule again in that particular area. So let me read really quick because there's another, and I'll share this article as well. It's from a little bit further back, but it's about the cloud people of Peru and how they were also Caucasoid, as far as their feature, and how they spoke about that they were a lost race, an ancient civilization. Um, so I'll share this, and I'll share one other article about the giants and the ancient mysteries in China, and then we'll talk about some of the aspects of the prior time. All right. The legend, the legendary white-skinned cloud people. Let me make this article larger. And I did post it in the chat room for those of you that are interested in reading it. It says this: archaeologists have discovered a 12-acre lost city deep within the Amazon rainforest that may shed light on a long-lost tribe of white-skinned, blonde-haired people known as the Cloud People. The Cloud People, also known in legend as the White Warriors of the Clouds, established expansive kingdoms located in the northern regions of the Andes in present-day Peru. During the 9th century, bordered by the Maranon and Utacumba rivers in the zone of Bagua. Their civilization extended up to the basin of the Abicio River and to the very edges of Peru's northern Amazon jungle. The Cloud People were defeated by the Incas, but later conquered them by aligning with the Spanish conquistadors. Unfortunately, diseases brought to the New World by their allies eventually wiped the Cloud Peoples out. Past archaeological discoveries were so heavily looted that little was left to learn about the Cloud People, who are referred to as the Chachapoyas in Incan legends. Other pre-Hispanic groups refer to the Cloud People as the White Gods due to their height, blonde hair, and blue eyes. The Spanish conqueror Pedro Cieza de Leon wrote they wore woolen clothing and woolen turbans and described them as the whitest and most handsome of all the people that I have seen. And their wives were so beautiful that because of their gentleness, many of them deserved to be the Incas' wives and to also be taken to the Sun Temple. He also noted that the Cloud People were significantly taller than the Spaniards, indicating that they were of Nordic and not Mediterranean. Another Spanish conqueror, Orellana, wrote similar descriptions, and verification of the Cloud People's racial makeup came 2 years ago when archaeologists found an underground burial vault inside a cave with the mummies of 2 intact with skin and hair. Just a little bit more. According to the Inca legend, the Chachapoyas remembered that their ancestors came from the east. The Amazon River is one of the east, and far east is the Atlantic Ocean. Archaeologists have discovered paintings and drawings of large ships on the buildings of the Chachapoyas, indicating that they possibly traveled from Europe to South America by sea, passing through the Amazon River flows until they reached a more tolerable climate away from the unbearable tropical heat of the Amazon jungle. The Cloud People are probably best known for the Kulap fortress on the top of the mountain in Utacumba, which can only be compared in scale to the Incans' Machu Picchu retreat built hundreds of years later. The newly discovered fortress is tucked away in one of the most far-flung areas of the Amazon, sitting at the edge of a chasm which may have been used as a lookout post. It was extremely isolated and very well preserved. The main encampment is made up of circular stone houses overgrown by jungle, over 12 acres according to archaeologists. Rock paintings cover some of the fortifications, and next to the dwellings are platforms believed to have been used to grind seeds and plants for food and medicine. All right, so this again gives you an interesting perspective into these particular beings and how, you know, um, there's a whole other chapter of history and prehistory which science doesn't teach and most people do not know about. Even like with the Olmecs of South America and how they have, um, African features and traits, and how they, these huge giant stone carvings have been discovered all over South America, and they are attributed to a culture, a civilization that preceded the Mayans or the native peoples that are currently in that particular land. And so there have been um, vast interminglings of peoples all over the world. And this doesn't even include the stories of the six-fingered and six-toed giants, these red hair, green eyes, blonde hair, blue eyed giants that are also have been attributed as living all over the world. That there are stories, mythologies about them. Even when, when the first visitors to during the late 1700s and early 1800s, the explorers that traveled to all these remote regions of the world, there were often stories about their encountering huge giants, groups of giants, and people of such size and stature that, um, just as it says in Numbers chapter 13, when the Israelites sent spies into the land of Canaan to assess the people that were living there, they brought back an evil report speaking about how the sons of Anak, the sons of the Anunnaki, the giants, how they dwelt in the land of Canaan, and how there were so many of them that there would be no possible way that they could overthrow any of their cities, because they were also very strongly fortified and high walled cities, that they stood not a chance, and that they were as grasshoppers. They, in comparison as far as size, that they were much like grasshoppers in comparison to the people that lived in the land of Canaan. And so the Bible has all through it, woven throughout its discourse in the Old Testament, stories of these particular giants, these particular beings, even to the story of which most people are very well aware of and familiar with, the story of the shepherd boy David taking on the Philistine giant Goliath, and how he was able to stun him with 4 stones, and he then used Goliath's own sword to cut his head off. And David and his ancestors, they actually went to war and fought against four giants: Saf, Ishbin, Bob, and another which remains nameless. But um, you can find these stories mentioned in Chronicles and First and Second Kings. And again, it's the war of um, of Israel, the people Israel, the Hebrew people Israel, against these giant beings who were of the tribe of Canaan that had intermarried into the children of Ham, the fourth-born son of Ham, and how Nimrod was also part of this particular lineage. But all of them had come post-flood from Og of Bashan, who is cited in the scriptures as being the last remnant giant. And so we'll talk a little bit more about this when we come back. I have one other article I want to share with you as well, and I'll share some passages which bring some clarity to this. But even the Paiute Indians, they went to war against these particular red-haired cannibal giants, and a lot of their bodies were found in the Lovelock Cave. All right, we'll be right back for final segment. Welcome back, everybody, for final segment. Hello, Wild Bob. Sorry to hear about your accident, brother. I didn't know. Um, and so I wanted to mention really quick, because I don't often do so, but I've written 8 books now, and I'm almost finished with my 9th one. And for those that are interested in some of the things that I talk about, even here with discussion of all the giants and the fallen angels, and speaking about the 2 incursions as far as the rebel angels and also the watcher angels, I cover those particular stories in 2 of my books, specifically my 4th book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, and my 6th book, Sons of God, Who We Are and Why We're Here. But for anybody that might be interested in any of the things that I write about, you can certainly contact me at zengarcia.com. That's my author website. Published through Tate Publishing, and just to list the books that I do have available, my first and second are no longer in print. Um, the third one is A Different Way of Being, which is about my transition into disability after being involved in an accident when I was 24 years old, and acquiring a disability. But my fifth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, talks about the 2 different bloodlines and speaks about and connects the giants and the fallen angels to the seed of the serpent, as it mentions in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, where the Most High, speaking to Satan, says, I will put enmity between your seed and her seed, meaning Eve, and that Cain, who murdered his stepbrother Abel, Cain was actually the firstborn son of the serpent, a hybrid child of the devil. And that's why he was a murderer and a liar and a deceiver. And he was not inclined naturally, after, if his father was Adam, that he was of different likeness and similitude, is what it says in Genesis about Seth, who was born to replace Abel, from Adam, from the copulation of Adam and Eve. It would be Seth who would represent the seed of the woman, or the sons of Adam, and he would propagate the children of Adam, and the patriarchs, um, Enosh and um, Kenan and Mahalalel, Lamech, um, Yared, Enoch, even that which led to Noah. All of these different patriarchs are representative of these sons of Adam, and they're listed in Genesis chapter 5, whereas the children of Cain, as the firstborn son of the devil, they are found in Genesis chapter 4. And so that particular book, I also list many different source references to the fallen angels and the giants, um, and talk about how they are connected to the war of these two bloodlines going all the way back to what was the war in heaven. And the 1/3 of the angels of the Most High that joined Lucifer in his rebellion and that fell with him and were cast out, banished, exiled from the upper heavens. That war that began way back in our ancient past is ongoing today here upon this planet between the children of Adam and the children of Cain, who are also cited as the children of perdition, the um, the sons of Belial, whereas Adam's children and his lineage are cited as the children of promise, or the sons of light, or the sons of the law. And that's why at the very end of days, the Most High says that when he returns for his second coming, that the wheat would be separated from the tares. Tares being the children of the devil. It cites in Matthew chapter 13 that the enemy which snuck into the garden and sowed the tares, that this was the devil, that the devil beguiled Eve, impregnated her with Cain, and that is the result. The whole eating of the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that was Eve being beguiled by the serpent, the feathered serpent, the Nakash, the shining one, the enchanter, the magician of Genesis chapter 3. And that the wheat are connected to the sons of Adam, the seed of the woman, and the tares are connected to the children of the devil. And so that whole parable is um, connected to what we see being played out in the world, even with the Pharisees who conspired to murder Christ. He called them the children of the devil. He said that ye are of your father the devil. He called them a den of vipers. And so they literally are connected to the serpent seed. It is a physical characteristic among them. And so, anyways, that's also connected to the Matthew chapter 7, the parable of the goat and the sheep, and Matthew chapter 25, the wise and the foolish virgins. It's all the same thing. You see playing out throughout Scripture and throughout the eras of history, the history of humanity. You see these two bloodlines warring against one another. And so, um, anyway, so if you're interested in purchasing any of my books, contact me through zengarcia.com. Let me know which ones you're interested in. I will give you a bulk discount, and I will autograph them for free. All right. So I wanted to read one final story. Also, I wanted to announce that I will be standing in for Royce Hollerman, and I do ask that everybody pray for Brother Royce. He's in the hospital again. I don't know if you know, but he's been battling emphysema for quite a long time now, and he's a very kind brother, very good-hearted soul. And so, if you would, please keep him in your prayers. But I'll be standing in for him tomorrow on Studio A between 1 and 3 p.m. Eastern. And I'm not sure what I'm yet going to talk about, but I'll try to keep it interesting. So definitely join me if you can there on Studio A at 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern. All right. The article that I wanted to share um, is translated. It says ancient China had teamed up to defeat the giant alien invasion. And it says this. I thought this would be a good way to end the show and to kind of tie together all these loose connections. It says researchers in China and Siberia Oracle unearthed inside found some strange messages combined with local myths handed down since ancient times. The researchers draw a stunning conclusion and know that because this is translated, it won't read right at times. It will sound almost like, broken English or something of that nature. And so just be aware. Okay. Handed down since ancient times, the researchers draw a stunning conclusion. Seven aliens have invaded northern China and conducted with humans 300 years of an ongoing war. According to some Chinese ancient frescoes, show in northern China might have been an alien invasion and continued with aliens launched a 300 plus year war. So you can see how it reads kind of funny. That this is an English translated from the Chinese, so that's why it reads weird. But still, you'll get the gist of the story. And it's weird. Well, you'll see. An alien army enslaved Chinese people to build the pyramids, and to different tribes, forces launched a war. Meanwhile, residents of the northern tribes also to aliens launched a counterattack. According mural display, when a group dressed in leather armor, 12-foot tall red-haired giants of ancient Chinese people to help fight the alien invaders. This is what I was speaking about, it being weird. Because according to this mythological account, this ancient story, these red-haired giants, whom we know to be cannibals, according to, a lot of the traditions worldwide, even to that of the Paiute Indians, maybe, this was a particular sect that was benevolent. But anyways, according to this story, they helped the ancient Chinese people to ward off an alien invasion and to fight against, to set up counter defensive against this alien invader. Strange, huh? All right, continue. 12-foot tall, red-haired giants of ancient Chinese people to help fight the alien invaders. During the same period, red-haired giant also appeared in the world, and they drive the alien invaders back into space. They saved the Chinese, or that they saved the planet. According to Dr. Zachariah Sitchin, said Anunnaki and other cultural researchers from 25,000 to 30,000 years ago to northern Indian and Mongolia's Gobi Desert, highly developed city has encountered serious air pollution and nuclear war. And then the West, but few people know, is covered with snow in northern China, also had a ridiculous war. The war party actually is Chinese people, the giant red hair and aliens, a terrible war. All right. you have to kind of read between the lines because, again, um, I guess, however, the Chinese language is translated when it's, you know, translated into English, it's not, the sentences are not constructed in the same way that we construct ours, and so it reads weird. All right. A terrible war. Researchers in China and Siberia, Oracle unearthed inside, found some strange information combined with local myths handed down since ancient times. The researchers draw a stunning idea: heaven alien invasion of northern China and the Chinese people beast as slaves. For information about the war have been preserved. In order for future generations to remember the deeds of their ancestors in ancient times, the Chinese people will have a significant battles recorded on cattle scapula or turtle shell, which is oracle. After several generations of evolution, the Chinese language has been considerable improvement. Shape and tone becomes more suitable for communication. However, meanwhile, those historic events narrated by the text shape but has been unable through modern texts reflected. Fortunately, those silk and rice paper used to record events and some have been preserved. Just a little bit more. Restructuring invasion. These alien spaceships arrived in China, the Chinese calendar, yet born. It can only be inferred about an alien invasion of the time. Part of Asia, scholars believe that Chinese calendar originated in the 4th century, 14th century BC. But there is another way of saying that China's calendar was born in 2637 BC, created by the Yellow Emperor. After an argument to get official approval, which originated in the Chinese lunar 27th century BC, the West in 2012 that China's 4,710 years ago. Thus, we can infer that the alien invasion, slavery, after the war, there is a place in the 30th century BC. So I guess this took place in the 30th century BC. Just a little bit more. Stone War record. Things that happened during that period cannot use Oracle to record, but there are scholars in a 30,000-year-old stone carving found alien invaders myths still not gone. Amazing piece of stone in the South China Sea to China. Guangdong discovery. Stone is part of the mystery of the ancient war, also describes the ancient Chinese people forced into this interstellar war. According to these ancient relics, to mention the war, describing the alien invaders and modern, actually strikingly similar. They were high, slender. Once they left the ship for a long time, you must bring a helmet, a breathing mask. There are 2 on the helmet, something like 3 chutes or antenna. Angry God, aggression, unarmed ancient people. After the aliens arrived, the locals were forced to work for the aliens, and the aliens became slaves. This reminds us of Dr. Sitchin on Sumerian View. He claims that the Sumerian and other ancient cultures have recorded their slaves had become alien and for the alien to mine gold. In Aliens Forced Down, they built the pyramids and some lessons from the Earth's interior. Gold piping. This is the ancient Chinese people have experienced things. Large and small vertical and horizontal staggered pyramids covered with vast land, some of the Chinese University of scholars have pointed out some of the pyramids have been several years old, like the ancient Egyptians, and ancient American civilizations, like ancient Asian civilizations. Although mysterious, but there is no ability to build the pyramids. Pyramids does not have any religious overtones and purpose, while also unique with these social sectors. Agriculture does not matter. According to these precious carvings, ancient display, combined with local myths, the researchers learned that a large number of Chinese who died during the enslaved aliens and the uprising happened many times. They tried to overthrow the alien rulers, but each uprising failed. Savior, giants from the northwest. All right, this is the last part. Ancient giant footprints almost all over the world on all continents. They rescued and enslaved humanity from alien hands. Part of the giants' relic bones, and even the mummies still saved today. America, Europe, Siberia, and parts of Asia, both of them read. The red-haired warrior wearing leather armor enough to stand up to 12 feet high. No written records, but according to the description of existing ancient myths, these giants from China's northwest flocked and launched a war with these aliens. According to the mythology described, these giants are very strong and can easily lift the aliens. The aliens like branches broken down, the middle like living giants, brave, fearless terror, and their actions scare these demon-like alien invaders. Despite the alien invaders have powerful weapons, but the face of the ferocious giant red hair and angry Asian slave revolts, they eventually gave up aggression. The war has been 5,000 years ago, and there have not been alien invaders. And we also hope that history will not repeat itself. So, according to this story, they're saying that the red-haired giants, which in every other part of the world, and according to the biblical account, the giants were born of these these alien invaders, the Watchers, not the rebel angels, but that the Watchers, when they left their first estate, they took wives of the daughters of Cain, and the giants were born of them. And so, and also that the ancient pagan religions, idolatry, that they worship their alien parents, the fallen angels, as their parents, and they offered blood sacrifice and children sacrifice to them, as a way of contacting and gaining favor amongst the fallen angels. So, according to the story of the Chinese, they're saying that the giants helped them to free themselves from the servitude of being slaves to these fallen angels. But the other ancient mysteries, the other ancient stories, speak of the fallen angels, that they were the ones that gave birth to the giants, and the giants, as the those that ruled over humanity for the fallen angels, they worshiped their fathers in blood and child sacrifice, and they were